Hey everyone, welcome to Grief Out Loud. It's Jana. While I planned to put out a brand new episode this week, and last week too if I'm honest, life had some other plans. Those of you who have been listening to our show for a while know that my dog Captain has been approaching the end of his life. A week and a half ago, on Sunday, December 8th, we had to say goodbye to him. 4 days later, I got hit with the worst flu I've had in years. As you can tell from my voice, I'm still making a comeback. I joked and called it my grief flu, but then I started to wonder about all of you and who else has had grief show up in a really physical way. I've heard stories over the years about backs that go out and necks that won't turn and jaws that hurt and stomachs that churn. If you have a similar story, send me an email. Even better, send me an audio message. And maybe in the new year, I'll include some of your recordings before each episode. You can email me at griefoutloud@dougy.org. While this grief is still very new, I've been grateful to each of the guests on the show and to each of you who have reached out to me. I've learned so much, and that knowledge is helping me not be at all surprised by how the grief arrives moment to moment. It doesn't make it any more comfortable, but I'm glad to not be questioning myself or thinking, is this okay? Is this normal? So thank you. Knowing I'm not alone makes all the difference. So since grief and the flu did a number on my production schedule, I thought I'd reshare last year's Holidays in Grief conversation that I had with Melissa Peede Thompson, my colleague at Dougy Center. One thing we know around here is that this time of year can be real mixed for people who are grieving. If you need additional support right now, you can check out our past Grief Out Loud holiday episodes. I'll link to all of them in our show notes. And you can also explore our website, dougy.org, for tip sheets and other resources. If my voice holds out, I hope to have a new episode up for you the week of New Year's, which is its own very griefy holiday. Okay, here's my conversation with Melissa from December 2023. Melissa, thank you for making time to be on Grief Out Loud, especially when today is your day off.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Melissa, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is at the Dougy Center and what your connection is to the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. At Dougy Center, I am a grief services coordinator. And essentially what that means is I run some of our peer groups that we have, and specifically our bereavement groups for after a death. Right now I'm running 6 groups, and I have kids and teen groups. And then in addition to that, I just do some other little things here and there.
And you also have a bit of a personal connection to Dougy Center prior to becoming a staff member, right?
Yes. So I don't know why this is like a funny story to me. So my dad died when I was 13, and shortly after my 14th birthday, or maybe right before I was 14, my mom took my brother and I to Dougy Center. She had a bunch of people in her life being like, "You need to go here." And my brother was just a year younger than me. And so my mom took my brother and I to an orientation. It was actually at the Gleason house. So very shortly after the fire, because my dad died in 2009 of June, I was maybe a little bit of an angsty teen. And I remember being like, nope, not for me. And my brother and my mom came for a while. I don't think they stayed at Dougy Center very long, but I want to say they were there for maybe like 3 or 4 months. And my brother was in a middlers group. And I'm pretty sure he was a middlers group on a Wednesday night, which is now the group that I run, which is kind of funny. And then, yeah, I want to say it was 14 years later, I ended up on staff at Dougy Center and don't want to leave.
Well, and just to date myself, listeners, if Melissa came to an orientation in 2009 at, which she mentioned, the Gleason Street location, that was our temporary location when our main building burned in an arson fire, I definitely ran that orientation. So I'm pretty sure I interfaced with your angsty teen self back in the day.
It's full circle moment.
So I know you mentioned that your dad died when you were 13, and you've had a few other folks in your family die as well. So today, in this moment, who would you like to bring into the space with us? Who would you like to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely my dad. My dad, he died in a motorcycle accident, like I said, when I was 13. But before my dad had died, I was 6 years old when my sister had died of gun violence. And she was 16 at the time of her death. For just a little bit of context, my sister biologically is my half sister. When I think about the holidays, I also do think about my maternal grandparents a little bit. So I might bring them into that space occasionally. And that would just be, I call them Mama and Papa. They're just my grandma and my grandfather.
Going back to when you were 6 and the holidays, and when I say holidays, I'm really talking about the end of calendar year holidays, the more commonplace ones that happen in November, December, and early January. Melissa, what do you remember about being 6 and your sister having died and how that impacted your experience, which in a sense was most likely the experience of watching your parents experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like I need to give just a little bit of context. So I didn't know my sister died of gun violence until after my dad died. And I remember like laying in bed with my mom one day, and I just like deep down kind of knew that what I was told as a kid like wasn't true. And I asked my mom, and she had finally told me like the real story of like what happened. I didn't have that as a kid, like knowing like what really happened. I kind of understood what they said is like she got into like a car accident. And I could see maybe how I process that now knowing the story, but that's not what happened. And my sister only lived with my family and I for about 1.5 to 2 years during my life. And when she had died, she was no longer living with us. So I would say I was maybe like 4 or 5 when she was living with us. And I feel like I don't remember a lot of that time. But what I do remember overall is I remember I used to think my dad was really lazy when I was little. And I but like the older I got, I started kind of like putting the timeline together. And what I really think was happening is that my dad was grieving. And we didn't talk about my sister a lot. I don't have a lot of memories of her. What I saw from my parents, I didn't understand as grief, being a 6 year old. And especially during the holidays, my dad had such a big personality. And if anything, I think what he did is really, I think it really impacted like how much he wanted to make sure he was there for my brother and I, since he wasn't able to be a part of my older sister, his daughter's life as much as I know he would have liked to. And then having that time cut short from her dying as well. So I remember being very spoiled when I was little, lots of gifts. And I actually think that was a reflection though of my parents like wanting to give my brother and I everything they could give us, knowing that they couldn't give that to my sister. And even though my sister wasn't my mom's biological daughter, my mom and her very much had a mother-daughter relationship. So that's just the little bit that I remember from that.
I'm wondering, what other memories do you have as you were older of your dad around the holidays? Like, what was his role?
I mean, my dad was just like the personality, I would say. He was big and bold. I'm sure that it was my mom who did the majority of the shopping. And, I remember my mom, she like we always had, we were either going to my grandparents' house or my grandparents were coming up for the holidays. So there was always like lots of cleaning involved on her end. But my dad, he was just like, he's kind of the life of the party kind of person. So I remember like during the holidays when we got older, he was just loud and he was bold and he was so excited for us to open every gift. And my parents, like literally, it was like only one person could open a gift at a time because like, they wanted to see what everybody got and like be a part of that. And when I was in middle school, my dad got a video camera at some point, and then he started videotaping everything, including Christmas. And yeah, I remember he was just so excited to, him and my mom both were just so excited to like watch my brother and I like open our gifts and see the excitement on our faces and all of that. So just very bold as I got older and just a big part of it. And I remember too, our last Christmas together, actually, he got this. We saw in a restaurant one time that there was like a Christmas tree hung upside down. So the next year, my dad like hung a Christmas tree in our house upside down. So he was always really creative, not just around the holidays, but definitely saw it come out sometimes, in those ways too.
Your dad died in June, and so by the time the winter holidays rolled around, you were about 6 months into grieving for him. How did the holidays change, and like what do you remember, if anything, about that first year?
Yeah, so there's a small chance that I have this timeline wrong, but I am 99.9% sure that my first, specifically Christmas, without my dad, that my mom unintentionally had like a boyfriend. So my mom ended up dating somebody fairly soon after my dad had died, and my parents were together when he had died. And it, just some things happen. And I think that we all look back and we're like, how the heck did that happen? So yeah, my first Christmas without my dad, my mom's boyfriend at the time was with us, and it was at my grandparents' house, which the part about being at my grandparents' house wasn't uncommon. We often like took turns, like them hosting, and then we would host and kind of like flip-flopped that. But he was there. I wasn't a fan of him at all. My brother and him got along really well, but I remember he got me like a cool gift, like a nice pair of shoes, and I was, appreciative of that, but like I never wanted him around, and it seemed like all of a sudden he was.
Listening to you, Melissa, I'm picturing that like sometimes when something arrives, and it's certainly not replacing what's no longer there, but when something arrives, it can sometimes be harder to see all the ways that what's not there is not there when there's something else in the way.
Yeah, I hear that because, I definitely felt like when he was around, it almost really did feel like actually like my dad's existence was then just like pushed away. And, not everybody's that way, but I definitely think it had to do with who he was and his character. And, some of those things came out later, and he's not in our lives anymore, and only stuck around for about a year. Too long, if you ask me. It definitely was hard to really think about what having a first Christmas meant for my family without my dad there. And my mom, she definitely was like the breadwinner in the household. So she like, in terms of what I know often can happen for families, is like this large financial shift. We didn't have that. So in terms of like Christmas looking different for like the amount of stuff or the things that we did, that didn't change, but it never, ever, ever felt the same still.
Looking back, Melissa, what's your sense about your teenage and young adult self, like having this place of reflection on it? Like, what was your take on the holidays then? And how do you feel about the holidays now?
I was actually talking to my mom about this recently. I think the best way to describe it is Grinchy. I was thinking about that more recently too, and I was like, but at the end of like the Grinch, like his heart gets 3 times bigger and all of that, so maybe there's some hope that it won't always be that way. Yeah, it just, I don't think I have a word to describe the change and the shift. But definitely like I remember being younger after my dad died and just like kind of wondering if like the holidays were still worth it. Like I was very fortunate to have a family that could be together on the holidays, and we had presents under the tree, but that just never felt like enough after my dad died. And like when I was like little, like that's all it was about. It was only about the presents under the tree and things like that. And then as I've gotten older, I think I still have like a lot of those same feelings, but there's like been a slight shift. I'm trying to be a little bit more grateful that I can spend the holidays still with family. Now that looks a lot different. It actually looks a lot bigger, maybe a little bit more chaotic. But like I just know like at the end of the day, my dad was the person that loved it the most. So I think I'm trying to shift my mindset to have some of that same appreciation that he did.
So in a sense, you've moved from that place of, this absence of my dad is making me not want to engage in this holiday at all, to what are some ways I might be able to honor my dad by shifting my approach to the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he loved Christmas for some reason so much, and trying to take that in a little bit, explore what that means for me, even if it's not the same thing that it meant for him.
Let's just get really tangible for a moment. And I think about how this time of year in late November, early December, although actually it really kind of starts in late September, early October, there's just a lot of visual, audio cues that the holidays are coming, right? You might walk into a store and see a display, or you log onto your email and you get a bunch of advertisements. How does that impact you when you start to see some of those cues that holiday season is making its approach?
Yeah, I now like own a home. And so sometimes I'm like, ooh, yay, like what Christmas decorations or little wintry cute things do I want to like put in my home to like make it feel comfortable and for me? So that's definitely like a different shift in terms of like that stuff. There's like a little bit more excitement with that. I don't know if when I walk into the stores that I think so much about like what's missing or what this time of year means. I think about it the most when I'm like starting to plan with my family of like what we're doing. And when I'm like a very visual person, so I feel like I like imagine everything, vividly before it happens. And it just like when I think about Christmas, it just feels like there's this large absence when I'm with my family.
So for you, just that idea that spending time together is really the heart of the holidays for you now, and how when you come together, that's when you can really notice the people who aren't there and the people you aren't able to make plans with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
How did that shift again for you when your grandparents died?
It just, I mean, I remember like I used to have these like traditions with my grandma, and those traditions stopped even before she died. She had Parkinson's dementia. It was years and years before her death that she physically and mentally was like unable to like do the same things that we used to. I think like leading up to before they died, there was already kind of that grief there. It also shifted because it was really hard for my grandparents to travel anymore. We also like weren't always with them for the holidays anymore, even before they died. And so it just feels like just sucks. It just sucks. That's what it is. That's what I'm trying to get at. That there's just this additional shift of what felt like was, my immediate family was like dwindled down to 3. And even though I have a lot more people in my family now, I still often think about it in terms of it's just the 3 of us. And I'm trying to shift that a little bit. Like that's always a little bit like deep down in my core.
Is that sense of it's just the 3 of us now, is that connected to a sense of loneliness for you?
No, not necessarily. Cause like I said, really there are like a lot more people like in our family now. So my mom's married. I have a stepbrother, my older stepbrother and my brother are married. They have kids. I'm married and have a partner, and my partner has a lot of family on his side. So it doesn't feel lonely, and I know like, right, being physically alone and lonely aren't always the same things. I think that I've been fortunate enough to have like still a lot of like love surrounded from us. But, if I just think about from like where we started versus where we are now, those people that died left huge spaces. It feels like it really is an empty space that should be there. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like if, we were going to take a family picture, even though there could be 20 of us in a photo, it still feels like there's people missing.
That's such a good way of describing how, we don't replace people. Even if our life becomes full, number wise, with people or full of love and connection, there's still those vacancies.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned there were a lot of traditions that you had with your grandmother that you had to say goodbye to even before she died because of her illnesses. Is there one particular tradition that you're thinking about that the two of you used to do together at this time of year?
I've actually tried to start doing this just kind of around this time of year in general again. My mama had this amazing recipe for sausage rolls. I don't know if that's really what they're called. Essentially, it really is just like sausage and a pastry dough. She always made them for like events or holidays, and I would always help her. And I don't have her recipe, but I've done my best now to try to like recreate it to the best of my ability. It's fun making it because I'm thinking of her when I do it. So even if they don't turn out the same, and I mean, I'm vegan now, so I really don't make it the same. But yeah, I just remember being in the kitchen with her and taking the time to do that was always fun.
This is kind of a weird question, but given how family focused so many holidays are, not just the winter holidays, and when there's people in our families who have died, or people in our chosen family or our friend group have died, and there are those vacancies that we talked about, have you found yourself particularly enjoying a different time of the year more?
Yes. Oddly enough, like, and if I'm going to like pinpoint like a specific holiday, it's St. Patrick's Day. And that there is just like no expectation for St. Patrick's Day. You know what I mean? It's just been my thing. I'm just like, I look forward to St. Patrick's Day because there's no expectation. I don't do anything for it, but it's kind of what I like about it is that I don't have to do anything. And I know some people, St. Patrick's Day means a lot of different things for people in other places or what they do for it, but I literally do nothing and it's great. And I sit at home and that's my plan. And like I'll put something green on and it's simple and I love it. And that's it.
I love that you found a holiday you can look forward to because one, you don't have to do anything. Two, there's no expectation. And there's not really this push to come together as a family or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So me and St. Patrick's Day, that's where it's at.
Since you have a number of years of experience navigating the holiday time without your dad and now without your grandparents, do you have, I hate to say the word like suggestion or tips, but that's kind of what I'm going for here. Do you have anything that you would want to say to people who are listening that when it's maybe their first holiday season or their second or even their 10th since their person died, is there anything you'd want to share with them?
I think one thing that I had struggled with is that kind of this like weird, like, well, is it supposed to feel the same? Is it not supposed to feel the same? Like, what are these things supposed to mean now? It's one of those things that I think it's going to sound easier than it is, you know, is trying to find like the small thing that is maybe still good or enjoyable. I don't think I want to use the word good. I would say enjoyable. Man, that is so hard because I got to be honest, like when I was like a teenager, I was like, I don't think anything at that time. I really was like, this is great. But as I've gotten a little bit older, like the fact that I still have the opportunity to see my family on the holidays, I try to create some gratitude for that. I also just think it's okay to like the whole cliche, right? Like it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay that it doesn't feel the same. It sucks, but it doesn't have to feel the same. And you don't have to try to make it better either. Like it's okay to just let it be what it is. And if you're able to find those moments of joy, appreciate them when they're there. It's like the only thing I can really think of. Not really a great suggestion.
But I think that speaks to the reality of grief, that there's no magic fix for it. There's no quick remedy to get around it. There's just figuring out a way to be with it in the context that we're in. And so finding those moments, even if it's just a tiny moment that you can grab onto and have that sense of, okay, this doesn't feel totally horrible. Maybe it doesn't feel great, but it doesn't feel horrible, at least for right now. And using those moments as a way to go from this moment to the next moment to the next.
Yeah, trying.
Well, Melissa, thank you again for taking time on your day off to come and talk with me about this end of year holiday time and grief and the mix of all of it. I'm really grateful for your willingness to share your personal experience and also some suggestions for our listeners. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
And listeners, I say it each and every single time, but thank you for being part of the community, for making this show mean something, anything to those of us who are part of it. So if you'd like to reach out to me, you can email me directly at griefoutloud@dougy.org. That's DOUGY.org. It's also our main website where you can find information about our local programming. You can search for programs similar to ours in your home community, and you can find a whole bunch of free downloadable resources, including tip sheets and activity sheets, and each and every episode of Grief Out Loud. I'm excited as always to share that this podcast is sponsored in part by the Chester Stephan Endowment Fund. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us again next time.